Strange, a Lone Gunman Rewatch podcast. I'm Nick.
And I'm Kim.
A little more optimistic this week.
How are you? That's nice.
A little bit. It wasn't quite as distressing as the previous week, admittedly. But do we have much for news?
Yes, FileFest, the X-Files fan convention, is having a Kickstarter at the moment.
Ah.
So if you head on over to Kickstarter.com, the campaign is just called FileFest 2025. That's file spelt Phile, Fest 2025. And it is a Kickstarter. I believe they are fully backed at the moment, but you can still get in now to help fund FileFest itself. And there are a number of different tiers that get you various merch with your donations, up to and including tickets and kind of signing events with the guests that are going to be at FileFest.
Oh, very cool. Well, it should be exciting.
Yeah.
I have a teensy bit of news.
Oh, yeah.
So, apparently, David Duchovny has a podcast on Lemonada Media called Fail Better.
Fail Better.
Fail Better. Apparently, they ended up discussing his and Gillian Anderson's relationship during the X-Files.
Oh, okay.
Recently. And apparently, it's a reiteration of stuff we already know, the fact they were not getting on well towards the end.
Mm.
And when they resumed into the reboot series, they were a lot better off together. The most interesting thing I think about it is, other than there's some commentary from Duchovny on this, is it reiterates the Ryan Coogler reboot.
Oh, okay.
As they haven't got any more details on it, but they've mentioned it at the end of this article, so apparently it's still in the works somewhere.
I was wondering, because it's been so long since we've had any updates on that.
Yeah, so watch the space still. And
Oh, good. At least it's not totally dead in the water.
No, well, at least no one said it's dead yet, but then again, it's Albuquerque was circling around for ages before that got nuked. So
yeah, true.
Remains to be seen. However, I feel we need to take a trip to a different world, a strange planet full of small, bald-headed people with glasses.
It's not exactly what Dr. Zayas had in mind, I don't think.
No, and I also don't actually understand why this episode is called Planet of the Frohikes, but anyway.
It's because it's got a chimpanzee in it.
Yes. So, Planet of the Frohikes, as we alluded to last week, written by Vince Gilligan. We've got some words about this, but anyway. Directed by John Kretschner and first broadcast on the 6th of April 2001. So, guest stars Leyland Crook played Dr. Haslip, who was in Star Trek Enterprise and Deep Space Nine.
Okay.
On Buffy and Angel.
Okay.
There's Peter Bryant, who played Sergeant Benjamin. He's in a lot of stuff. So he was in Landed Bets.
Okay.
As like a cop. He's in Millennium. He's in Longlegs. Sonic the Hedgehog. Sucker Punch. White Noise. Keeps coming up.
Yeah, it does, strangely.
Dead Like Me. And Jumanji.
Which Jumanji?
The first Jumanji. The Robin Williams one. So, the surprise famous actor that they got for this is, of course, Edward Woodward, who plays himself. Kind of. In a roundabout way. So, did you know he was in Hot Fuzz?
I did, yes.
Okay, I didn't know he was in Hot Fuzz. But yeah, he's Hot Fuzz. But we know him best for not screaming, "Oh my god, the bees in my eyes," for doing the other, much more effective scream of when he saw the Wicker Man. So he is Sergeant Howie in The Wicker Man.
Which is one of the greatest horror movies of all time.
Yes. If you haven't seen it, go watch it now. Do not watch a Nicolas Cage film.
Or the sequel.
Well, yeah, with the Wicker Tree, which is very confusing. Bruno Verdoni was Pierre, who I can't remember who this is, but he's in Millennium and in Patient X. Forbes Angus played the French Trade Minister, who was in Millennium, Dead Like Me, Final Destination.
Okay.
I think he's the principal of the school or the other guy on the school trip with them.
The one that doesn't get off the plane?
The one who doesn't get off the plane, yeah. I think. He was also in Shadows, Soft Light, Blessing Way, Small Potatoes, and Bad Blood.
Oh, wow.
He was the mortician in Bad Blood as well.
Mm.
Marco Roy played the reporter who's going to be in Millennium. Kwesi Amaya played the second NP. So he's going to show up again in season 11 of The X-Files. He's in 50 Shades Freed.
Oh, no.
Sorry. Death Note, the Netflix one.
Oh, no.
Alone in the Dark.
The Uwe Boll one.
What other one is there?
One of the games?
Okay, the film. Blade Trinity. Kingdom Hospital.
Oh.
Dead Like Me. Another one that just keeps coming back. We're going to assume that you film these things in Vancouver.
So do you have a synopsis for this one?
I do. At the Boole Behavioral Laboratory in Richmond, Massachusetts, dozens of chimpanzees and computers are typing gibberish as a recording of Edward Woodward performing Hamlet is played for them. A scientist patrols the room with a clipboard checking each progress and discovers one of them is typing the words of Hamlet's current soliloquy, and as he realizes, the scientist runs to get his colleagues. When he returns with 4 of the scientists, they arrive to find the same chimpanzee pounding out gibberish like all the other chimps. The 4 scientists leave immediately, and while the ape gives the man a significant look, he starts to write his autobiography. In Baltimore, Maryland, at the Portsmouth Hotel bar, Yves flirts with a Frenchman until she slides over her hotel room keycard to him and walks away. Returned to her room, she returns sodium pentothal, but finds Frohike and Langley waiting for her. They found her because of her obsession with using Lee Harvey Oswald anagrams. They accuse her of sending an email to lure them into the same situation she has done in the past. Yves has no idea what they're talking about. As the Frenchman enters and promptly leaves, she realizes they have ruined her con and they are all in danger. Yves climbs up to her upper floor, and Frohike and Langley are slower to hide themselves after 3 men burst into the room ready to kill. Later, the lone gunman asks Yves about the email, and when they finally believe her that she has nothing to do with it, Frohike attempts to dismiss it. She demands they explain what this is all about, given the important work they have foiled. Byers recounts they received a message in a text and email with an audio clip. Yves identifies that the audio clip is of Edward Woodward. The audio claims to be from a slave subjected to cruel government experimentations to alter their brain. They are not the only one. They wish to be rescued. Yves suggested it as some kind of joke, and Byers relates that some tidbits are only in text email about the slave being called Peanuts by the scientists, and they should meet him at the Boole laboratory. The lone gunmen want to go anyway to confirm if it is a joke or not. On the off chance it pans out to be something, it could be a great story for their paper. Yves demands to go with them because they owe her for earlier. At the Boole laboratory, Dr. Haslip is informed that an unauthorized email was sent out and that one of the chimps is possibly implicated in sending it. Lone gunmen and Yves arrive at the Boole laboratory and stake the place out. They suspect that Peanuts is one of the workers, but Jimmy points out that one of the chimpanzees starts to signal them and suggests that this is in fact Peanuts. Yves finds out that Yves does not find this funny and goes with the bolt cutters to try and cut the padlock off the gate and urges the chimp to leave. The chimp lunges at Jimmy and knocks him to the ground and knocks him out. As the zookeepers and military police charge out, the remainder of the lone gunmen flee and into their van and rush away. Hiding out in a barn, Langley's Byers and Frohike discuss whether Jimmy was right about the chimp, and Yves reveals that the ape is actually with them in the back of the van. Meanwhile, in custody, Jimmy claims to be part of the Monkey Liberation Army. At the barn, the chimp is pushed aside when he attempts to use electronics. When Frohike picks him up and sets him aside, he realizes his keys were pickpocketed. They find the chimpanzee trying to steal the van, with Yves in wait, having disconnected the battery. Yves encourages them to give the chimpanzee a laptop, and he downloads a speech synthesizer program and begins to speak in the voice of Edward Woodward via the computer. He has given himself the name Simon White Thatch Patent Loins, and excuses his attempt to steal the van by suggesting he wasn't sure he could trust the lone gunmen any more than his captors. Frohike pushes Harlow to reveal that she knew about the program, and she mentioned rumors over many years to create super intelligent animals as spies or assassins. The problem with the program is that you cannot tell what the animal's politics will end up being. Dr. Haslip tries to convince Jimmy to reveal the location of Peanuts by telling him how well they treat the chimpanzees in the compound, and Jimmy lets slip that about slave names like Peanuts, and Dr. Haslip concludes that Peanuts contacted them directly. In the negotiations with Simon, lone gunmen find themselves unable to convince the chimp to help them publish an article about him. Uninterested in human politics, but is willing to give them another super intelligent ape. A freelance ex-Soviet chimp assassin, Bobo, who will mercilessly strike down someone in Washington, D.C. tomorrow. Simon describes how the French Minister of State will be stopping by the D.C. Zoo with his family, and Bobo will get him at the primate section. Important people want the talks to go their way, so they hired an unusual assassin. The lone gunman leaves to stop the assassination, with Langley and Simon remaining there to hack into the lab's computer system to see if they can spring Jimmy. Sergeant Benjamin informed Haslip that a ransom demand has been sent for the chimp, which baffles Jimmy. Following the trail of the ransom demand, the military police stormed the barn moments after a package was picked up, and they find Langley hanging upside down. They pull the cloth away to reveal he says, "As my God is my witness, I'm going to kill that damn chimp." Simon appears to have shipped himself to the National Zoological Zoo in Washington, D.C. At the zoo, Byers shadows the French minister, while Frohike and Yves, armed with tranquilizer guns, hunt for Bobo. They find two chimps, a female chimp named Lady Bonkers, a recent donation by the Bull Behavioral Lab, and a male Bobo. Bobo knocks out Frohike, though it did not seem intentional. Bobo steps outside with a large banana, which Byers believes is not a banana. He tackles the French minister to stop a primate assassin, and this goes badly as the bodyguards swarm him and arrest Byers. Frohike awakens in the lone gunman office, and Yves tells him to relax, that Bobo is dumber than a bag of rocks and not an assassin. Byers and Langley have joined Jimmy in federal custody. They are confused as to what kind of scam is being run, but Yves is confident the ape was playing them from the beginning just to watch them, wanted to suck them all in. Their only option is to now trade their friends for peanuts, using Bobo as a stand-in. The attempted deception does not work, as Dr. Haslip recognizes that he does not have Peanuts in his custody, and Jimmy lets slip that Peanuts, or Simon, is in the National Zoo. They arrive and find two chimps in the pen. Dr. Haslip and the MP take the male chimp, after Jimmy assures them that Peanuts must have gone so far as to dye his hair to disguise himself as Bobo. Haslip and the troops leave, indifferent to dealing with the lone gunman any further. The lone gunman berate Jimmy for handing over Simon, but Jimmy takes a laptop and hands it to Bobo, who begins typing. He tricked the military into delivering him into the zoo, thinking they had taken the real Simon back to the lab. Simon tells him he did it all to get to Lady Bonkers. Apparently Dr. Haslip had sent her away to the zoo because she was a distraction. They are unconvinced he would want to stay in the zoo, though, and he replies, "The whole world is a cage when you're trapped in it alone."
Thank you.
You made a point, I think, or we came to a conclusion while we were watching the episode, in that this is not a bad episode, but it doesn't work when the rest of the series has been so flippant.
It feels like it would be the season's comedy episode.
Yeah, which is very on brand for Vince Gilligan at this stage. And it's a shame because as a departure from the norm, this would be fine.
If we are assuming that all episodes have been kind of vaguely in the tone of Three of a Kind or the pilot.
Yeah, then this would have been a zanier, a kind of more slapsticky thing, but we would appreciated the deviation from the norm, because this is a absolutely absurd concept but done reasonably straight.
I also think it would have worked better if you hadn't had the opening sting with the chimpanzees writing Shakespeare.
Yeah.
You needed the first time when they saw Simon in the yard to be when you realise that it's a chimpanzee and not a political prisoner that they're rescuing.
Yes, I think that was actually a really odd choice, is to give us that knowledge ahead of the lone gunman. In a lot of media, it's the knowing more than the characters. Depending on the writer, but sometimes it works and sometimes it's absolutely infuriating and you're kind of yelling at the screen and it doesn't do you any good. But then again, it's also just annoying watching these people come to the wrong conclusions when it's patently obvious to you what's going on.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of it in here.
It takes them so long to figure out that the chimpanzee's intelligent.
It does, and I get the point. I get the point that Vince is making with Jimmy. With the whole, he's basically the smartest person in this episode because he figures out everything ahead of time.
Because he's on the same level as a chimpanzee.
Yeah. And again, that would be fine if every other episode Jimmy had been wrong at every juncture.
Yeah.
Not the weird mishmash of stuff that we've had with him.
Yeah, true.
So one thing I know you found hilarious and I found funny but also baffling is there's a bit where, because I've been thinking about this last week, where Peanuts, or Simon, is given a laptop and and types in what Frohike describes as a bunch of gibberish. And Byers comes back with, "It's not gibberish, it's Linux."
Yeah, the line still cracks me up.
And it's, there's a lot of avenues to go on this one. For one thing, 2001, it was a lot more obscure. This is a pretty geeky reference for 2001.
But Frohike should be familiar with Linux.
Well, what got me with this was, Frohike should be familiar with Linux, Langley should be familiar with Linux, Byers should be familiar with Linux, because in The Unusual Suspects, what they're messing around with is Unix, which is
Yeah.
what Linux is derived from. So that comment is very strange. What's more strange, though, is in conspiracy theorist terms. Because there is a long-running conspiracy theory that Windows has NSA backdoors into it.
Oh, okay.
It's never been proven conclusively. There's explanations for what people think they've found, but no one can sort of prove definitively that, we're using Windows is secure from the NSA spying on you.
I see.
The lone gunman of all the people in the X-Files universe would not be running Windows or Macs if this was a concept.
True.
They would be on Linux or one of the other derivations for security purposes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Frohike saying that is wildly out of character. But I know you did find it funny, and it's a strange gag.
It just cracked me up. I don't know why I find that line so hilarious.
It just...
I think it's just what every layperson thinks when they look at Linux as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you want to be really technical, you've also got the complication of, yeah, he can download it, but he can't use it if he's not installed on the laptop, which means he needs to do a whole lot of very complicated things very, very fast. But anyway, you mentioned as well when we were watching it, the Murder on the Rue Morgue, is it? Edgar Allan Poe?
Yes, The Murder on the Rue Morgue is an Edgar Allan Poe story, which, to spoil a very old horror story, it's about a bunch of murders that are committed by a shave-trained orangutan.
Yes. Referenced in that Frasier episode where they think they've solved Marty's cold case.
Yeah.
I think that's fine as a reference, and you can see it like in the background of Gilligan's idea to writing this.
Mm.
You just kind of want the reveal there is no Bobo, or Bobo isn't a trained assassin. I don't know, the threat doesn't actually feel relevant, does it? Because did you believe for a second there actually was another chimp who was actually a threat to people?
Admittedly, on lone gunman terms, yes, I did.
Okay.
But it very quickly becomes apparent that's not the case when they reach the zoo, and the bit where the chimpanzee's holding a banana and Byers believes it's a gun.
Yeah, again, this is like, if this was if this was Bad Blood, which I think is an interesting comparison given there's a lot of crossover into Bad Blood in this. If this was the Bad Blood of Lone Gunman, it would all be fine.
Yeah.
But not with everything else. So yeah, him wielding the banana like that is just that's Byers, that's banana.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
A very curvaceous yellow gun.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that makes me think a bit of the Jonathan Creek one, Cindy's Chimney. Yeah, where he's using the axe to batter down the door and manages to shoot her.
Are you spoiling a Jonathan Creek episode?
It's an old Jonathan. This is that's 25 years old.
But yeah, it's a shotgun that's concealed in the handle of an axe.
Yeah, and he manages to cut his way through a door and shoot someone.
Aiming perfectly
on a film set, no less. When he's actually cutting through a door with an axe, and it's, if you know anything about firearms or filmmaking or a lot of other things, you're going, "What is this? This is nonsense."
Yeah.
And the fact that she then points at the reflection in the plate glass window to indicate who the killer is. Oh my god.
Rather than pointing at him directly, of course.
Well, she'd been shot, she'd been turned in the chair,
Yeah.
so there's an explanation for it. It is, however, just nonsense. That was not a good episode. Anyway, well, I think that's the problem with this one, is it's damned by the rest of the series.
Yeah, it could have been a really fun episode. Apart from, I think, some small ethical issues about using chimpanzees.
Yes, because this was well after the rest of the world had said, we can't, good conscience, do this anymore.
It started in the 1970s. Apparently, even in some states of America, it's actually illegal to use chimpanzees as actors. There are currently 20 states that still allow it. Evidently, wherever this was filmed.
I think it's Vancouver.
We're Vancouver again.
Yeah.
You can do this. But it's largely considered to be a cruel thing. There are a lot of charities against this, in part because to train a chimpanzee, you've got to teach it to kind of go against its natural inclinations, which means it's harder to socialise them back with chimpanzees once they have been trained for television.
Yeah. So that's pretty bad.
Plus, we've also had a lot of high-profile things since about how just aggressive and vicious chimpanzees are, because you get the impression from film that they're quite docile and cuddly, but they really aren't.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big subplot in Nope.
Yes, Nope's a good example, actually, even though that's fictitious, because that's the one where you see clips of a sitcom through it that has a chimpanzee as a family member, until there is an incident where it goes berserk on stage and murders a bunch of the actors.
Yes.
Because chimpanzees, he's actually very deceptively small, Simon, in this, because they can weigh like 12 stone, they're incredibly powerful, they've got huge teeth.
Yeah, well, I think that was also one of the bits where the episode falls apart, is Simon shipping himself to the zoo.
Yes, I looked that up. Even a small adult male chimpanzee is almost 7 stone.
Yeah, he's gonna tear through the bottom of that box relatively easily.
Mm.
Also, the thing you want to point out to it is, you've shipped in a cardboard box to a zoo. Pretty sure when you transfer primates into a zoo, you don't do it through the post.
I feel there'd be some questions when your box of chimpanzee arrived.
Yeah, and even if he's disguised as something else, people are gonna go to, wait, what's this? Why is it so heavy?
Also, even if he's used that just to get past the gate and he's slipped in, I think at some point the handlers are going to look in and think, hang on, did we always have 3 chimpanzees?
Yeah, it's...
Back on the subject of training the chimpanzees for that, apparently that caused a lot of problems within filming this episode.
Okay.
Just because, first of all, is chimpanzees are highly intelligent. They are about as intelligent as a, 5 or 6 year old child.
Yeah.
And so they have the problem of chimpanzees get bored very easily. So you can have a chimpanzee do one take. By the time it's finished the take, it's bored.
Oh.
And so if you try and redo the take, the chimpanzee can't understand why it has to go through this again. So they had a lot of problems with motivation to try and keep the chimpanzees doing the same tasks over and over if they needed to reshoot.
Oof.
The other problem is, as you noted, it's filmed in Vancouver, which is cold. Chimpanzees are from Africa.
Yeah, it's not going to be
And
fun.
therefore they had a number of problems. They had to put a lot of things into place to keep the chimpanzees warm enough, because they just will not cooperate if they get too cold.
Yeah. A mess all around, it sounds like.
Apparently in all those scenes where you saw them typing as well, they were actually trying to rip the keys off the keyboards and eat them.
I can see that. That makes more sense.
Seems it's not that practical getting chimpanzees to write Shakespeare.
No.
Though the entire episode is likely a commentary on the fact that the Department of Defense in America was notorious for doing kind of seemingly pointless experiments on higher primates. So they would do things like the monkeys writing Shakespeare is the obvious ridiculous example of this. But, you'd put a monkey in a ridiculous simulation to test something.
Yeah. Well, it strikes me a bit as there's an offhand comment in the first Dirk Gently book.
Yeah.
When Dirk Gently's first ever case is to locate the cat when they try to do Schrodinger's cat experiment for real.
Yeah.
And it vanishes. And it turns out it's not vanished. It got very fed up of being put in a box, but it ran away.
Yeah.
And the guy sort of comes to Gently and says, but that's stupid. You don't do Schrodinger's cat. It's a thought experiment. You're not meant to do this for real. There's no point in doing it for real.
There was an interesting comment from the actor who played Jimmy in this episode. It's the scene where they have Jimmy sitting down, colouring in with the chimpanzees, which apparently was the actor's idea.
Yeah.
Because he realised it drew the similarity between Jimmy's level of intelligence and these apes.
Yeah.
But it was him noting how intelligent these chimpanzees are, because when he was colouring, they were acknowledging what he was doing, looking at, and as he was putting crayons down, they were taking his same crayons and kind of doing the same drawings. It just shows, the observational power of them and how smart they are.
Jimmy's actor is absolutely right. This is entirely accurate.
Yeah.
Again, it kind of underlines the whole you shouldn't be in this series. But yes, you actually are doing things to the right level.
I did actually like the fact that the episode falls on Jimmy's level, as you commented earlier, in the fact that Jimmy, because he's on the same kind of wavelength as the chimpanzees, he picks up things faster than the more intelligent characters, because he's understanding the chimpanzees.
Yeah, but it relies on Jimmy being wrong basically every other time for it to work this time.
Mm.
And the fact that he's not in that quite the right way.
Jimmy actually has a surprising amount of emotional maturity compared to the likes of Langley in particular.
Yes.
Jimmy can more readily empathise with people even though he's not particularly bright.
Yeah. One thing, and this was actually a complete shock, is, hey, Vince can write Yves. But only this time, because as soon as we get to Maximum Byers, Yves goes out the window again. But for this one episode, Yves is actually behaving how I expect Yves to behave.
Compared with 3 Men in a Smoking Diaper, you mean?
Yes. So she's actually doing the femme fatale thing. She's in the hotel lobby. She's being the very sketchy seductress, femme fatale. We don't know if she's robbing this guy, if she's going to drug him, get information out of him. We don't know what she's doing, but she's doing a bit.
Yeah.
And it's, this is what I expect for you. I don't understand why she insists on using Lee Harvey Oswald as an anagram for everything she does.
Yeah.
Because as much as people aren't going to notice entirely quickly, this feels like too much of a tell, and you can get random identities easier than just anagramming the same 3 names.
True.
What are you doing, Yves?
There must be a limit to how many varied names you can get from Lee Harvey Oswald as well.
If we can be bothered, we can go and try and look it up, but I think it's one of those ones where you'd be sort of going, is that a name, or is that just nonsense now?
All the names would be too similar.
Yeah.
You know, the equivalent of, I spelt Sarah with a H last time. This time we'll spell it without and put the H somewhere else.
Yeah. So I like her actually being a femme fatale, but then how Lungerman find her makes sense, but at the same time, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Stop doing that. And I kind of like the faking the escape where the sheets over the edge of the hotel room, that's fine. But not how they got away with hiding on top of an umbrella that basically should be visible as soon as you walk in onto that
very
balcony.
transparent.
Yeah.
Translucent, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a case of, it was when the camera pans over, it's a case of, and they missed them how?
My goodness, even if we'd looked up a fraction of an inch more.
Yeah. Like, yes, she's on the upper level, that's fine. Frohike and Langley should be shot at this point.
Yeah.
But it is interesting that the start of the episode does rely on the existing. Well, it's odd because they're saying, we think you sent us this email because you've done this to us before. Because you've used us to get what you wanted.
Yeah.
But that was like water for Octane, and I don't think she's done it any other time. She's done it once.
Mm.
And you've got to wonder if Vince is writing this episode to a perception of how the series was going to work that didn't pan out.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of weirdness is in here that in a different series would be fine, but in this series we could have had it better. Do we have much else for this one? Because I think the problem is it's competent, but it's wrong for this series now.
I did think that the ultimate solution of this episode is incredibly sweet.
It is very sweet.
It has a lovely little ending with Simon being reunited with his girlfriend.
Yeah.
And just that whole comment about, even though he's intelligent, he'd rather live with his girl because, the whole world's a cage if he's alone, or however he puts it at the end.
Yeah. It is very sweet. I mean, again, I'm not sure how well he's going to cope with that. Also, if there's going to be like super intelligent apes as a thing at Washington DC Zoo.
You're like the rats of Nim.
Like the rats of Nim. The other I'd say the downside to it is Lady Bonkers isn't presented as intelligent.
Well, Simon's supposed to be the only success. Or Peanut, as he's actually called. Well, Peanut is his slave name.
Yes.
Yeah.
But, so Lady Bonkers is a distraction, and, yeah, fair enough. But, yeah, super intelligent apes coming out of the DC Zoo, future X-Files episode, maybe.
It's so cute. It made me think of... You have that tone at the end of a lot of the more lighthearted X-Files episodes, like The Unnatural, which just end on that lovely, sweet, kind of pastoral moment. It's that sort of feel to it.
It is. And again, it's... As nice as it is, I think, again, it feels like it was designed to be a contrarian episode. And it ain't.
Mm.
But if we have nothing else...
No, my only small question is, why the hell is it called Planet of the Frohikes?
Yes, that's my question as well. Other than we wanted to make the Planet of the Apes reference, sure.
But you already did, because it's the Bull Laboratory, and Charles Bull wrote the book that Planet of the Apes is based on.
Yeah. And we wanted to have it entitled, apparently. But then it's like, why pick on Frohike?
I guess the Bull Laboratory is a slightly higher brow reference, and somehow we wanted to hammer it home a bit better.
Yeah, but as you said, but why Frohike?
Planet of the Frohikes. It's not even... it's more Jimmy that's kind of in tune with the apes in the episode. Frohike does carry around Simon a bit, and that's about his connection to it.
Oh, Planet of the Jimmies, Planet of the Peanuts, Planet of the Simons. There are less low government referencing names.
It's not even that the word Frohike sounds a bit like the word ape, just to get the simile in there.
It's not a pun.
No.
Maximum Byers, on the other hand.
Nice segue.
I thought so. I will bet that Maximum Byers is a reference to the book Maximum Bob by the writer of Get Shorty, never forgotten, and the short-lived TV series of the same name, which there's not a lot of similarity between them, because Maximum Bob, it was a very surreal TV series, and the book is much more straightforward. But anyway, so directed by Vincent Misano, written by Vince Gilligan and Frank Spotnitz.
Interestingly, this is the only episode that I'm aware of that Shiban had nothing to do with.
It's an interesting one in contrast, but it feels like we've immediately lurched away from a lot of things, but we'll get to that in a minute. As the guest stars, there's a whole lot of people we are quite well familiar with by this point. So I'm not going to go through the whole biography because we've done them a few times.
Okay.
So we've got Darren Burroughs, who is Douglas Pfeiffer, who was, of course, the bank robbery Monday. Badger Jola, who is Wallace Crendell Atherton, who was Nietzsche Manley in the list.
Oh, it was Nietzsche.
He's Nietzsche.
Ah.
Did not.
No, I didn't recognise him.
He's also going to be Millennium. Robert Lasardo is Lowry, who was, of course, in the Maisie Millini.
Oh, okay. Yeah. He's the other prisoner.
He's the other prisoner.
Yeah.
So Kevin McNulty played Jeremy Wash. So we've possibly done him before, but we'll do him again just because he's been in quite a lot of stuff. Actually, no, he's been in quite a lot of X-Files. So he was in Squeeze and Apocrypha.
Okay.
And played the same character in both.
Oh, really?
He's a different FBI agent, but he is the same guy, bizarrely.
Ah.
It's not clear at all, but he was the same. He was also in Soft Light.
He's the baddie in that one.
Yep. And he's also in Millennium. We've got Mark Aitchison, who played a trustee, who was the guy who delivers notes for Jimmy to Byers when he's in the infirmary.
Oh, the custodian.
Yeah. So this was very much a case of course. When reading down
we said
IMDb.
he looked super familiar.
Yeah, wait for it. So, okay, so starting way back, he was in Quagmire.
Okay.
He will show up in My Struggle Part 4.
Okay.
He's in My Little Pony Friendship is Magic.
Of course he is.
No one you recognise again. He's in the Dirt Gently US version again.
Okay.
Keeps coming back. Watchmen. Alone in the Dark.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Chronicles of Riddick. But the one you know him for. The one really should have known from the off. Elf. He's the guy
he's in the mailroom. Yes.
He has a name, but he's credited as the guy in the mailroom.
Yeah,
That's
got him.
Of course he looks familiar.
Yeah.
Dead Like Me, and very sadly Never Ending Story 3.
Poor man.
Gardner Miller played Sergeant Runselhoff, who was in Schizogeny and will show up in My Struggle. He also could be Millennium. Godzilla, the 2014 one. That was the Bryan Cranston one.
Oh, okay.
Joyride 2.
Oh, Rusty Nail.
Rusty Nail. And White Noise.
How many actors were in White Noise? I don't remember there being that many people in it.
Some of these are uncredited, and some of these are things like MVP voices and things.
Okay.
But still, it's very weird that film is cropping up over and over
There are
again.
only like 4 characters in White Noise.
French Tickner played the shopkeeper. This is the guy who angrily shouted at them about Douglas Pfeiffer. Death Note.
The Netflix version.
No, the anime. He's Dub.
Oh.
He's Watari.
Oh.
He's also in Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex Individual 11.
Is he any of the main ones?
No, the main ones. Inuyasha, where he's Grandpa Higurashi.
Oh, okay.
He's also going to be Millennium. He was in Space, the X-Files episode.
Okay.
And he's in Ranma Half. The old Ranma Half.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
So would you like to tell us about how Maximum Byers... This is a stupid title.
It is a stupid title, yeah. Our episode this time opens on a cruise liner somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, where the lone gunman plus Jimmy are coordinating their latest operation to prove that Elvis Presley is not dead. They ambush an old man playing Elvis on the cruise liner's show backstage, and Jimmy takes his place during the show. Although they tranquilize him and take his fingerprints, as they are doing so, Frohike realizes that he's wearing makeup and actually is not a white man, therefore obviously is not Elvis Presley. They do, however, find that he is one Thomas Ames, who is wanted for embezzlement, and the US Marshals were watching the show, initially arrest Jimmy, but quickly realise their mistake and arrest the right guy. After returning back to their headquarters, the lone gunmen are introduced to a friendly, middle-aged woman who comes to their door, introducing herself as Alberta Pfeiffer, who is their #1 fan who has been reading their work since the first issue. She is also present with Jeremy Walsh, her attorney. Alberta wants them to help her prove the innocence of her son Douglas, who is currently on death row, awaiting execution. Alberta vehemently believes her son is innocent. At first, her son Douglas was fighting tooth and nail to prove his innocence in the appeals process, but suddenly seems to have changed his mind and wants to get his execution over and done with. He's refusing to meet with anyone but his lawyer anymore. Alberta is a true believer in the power of the lone gunmen and thinks that only they can possibly help her. Although Langley and Frohike are reluctant to assist, Jimmy is desperate to help her and quickly does convince Byers of the same. Jimmy's belief is that they should infiltrate the prison in the way the A-Team would do so to rescue someone, and Byers does get on board. As Langley and Frohike hack the prison system to make them look like inmates, Jimmy and Byers take on the aliases of Jay Dillinger and Jay Wesley, put on orange jumpsuits, and slip onto a prison bus. They are driven to the death row unit in East Livingston, Texas, which is where Douglas is being kept. It is quite a shock to the system for both Jimmy and Byers, as they are subjected to a battery of humiliating rituals, such as communal showering and spraying them down for lice, before they are delivered to their cells. Left in their cells, Byers and Jimmy deliberate what they can do to help Douglas as they witness the other inmates around them. One in particular is a seemingly very gentle man who has a liking for the cockroaches in his cell. He always calls the cockroaches Jiminy, even though there's no way of telling if they're the same cockroach, and he just seems particularly friendly and good-natured, if maybe a little simple. The other man is an incredibly violent, aggressive individual who doesn't seem to speak much, who is absolutely covered in tattoos. As Jimmy and Byers get settled, Langley and Frohike visit Wally's Burgers in North Houston to investigate the murder case against Douglas Pfeiffer. They attempt to break into the shut restaurant, however, they are stopped by a local shopkeeper. While they confess to him that they're investigative reporters and ask about the murder, the shopkeeper recounts the nice man that Wally was, and admits that he saw Pfeiffer fleeing the scene. He is absolutely convinced that Pfeiffer is the murderer and is not innocent in any way. Langley and Frohike start to realise that they may have made a huge mistake getting Byers and Jimmy involved on this. Back in the prison, Byers and Jimmy learn that Douglas Pfeiffer is currently in the infirmary and therefore inaccessible to them. A trustee delivering the food to them tells them about the tattooed man opposite, explaining that he's not mute, but he doesn't talk because he has a severe lisp. Byers realises that this man could be their best way into the infirmary. While out in the exercise yard, he makes fun of the man's lisp and is badly beaten, thus giving him a direct in to where Douglas is. Meanwhile, Yves Adele Harlow meets with Langley and Frohike and laughs them out of the room about their ridiculous plan, poking holes in the idea and saying it would have been far easier for them to pose as prison officials, lawyers, or guards. She does, however, go to visit Jimmy Bond in prison, posing as his wife, and smuggles in a Firewire card in a bag of crisps. Byers comes around in the prison hospital and finds he's in a bed beside Pfeiffer. He tells Pfeiffer exactly who he is and explains that he came on behalf of his mother. Douglas Pfeiffer promises Byers that he will slit his throat if he ever discusses this with him or anyone else, revealing again his guilt. Back in the cell, Jimmy also sparks up a friendship with the kindly man in the cell opposite, having a vaguely philosophical conversation about the nature of life and his cockroach friends. Further investigating the murder from the outside, Frohike and Langley realise that it's actually a lot more complicated than it first seems. Although they do believe that Douglas Pfeiffer was the killer, they believe that he actually made it look like a simple robbery gone wrong when it was actually a contract killing. Douglas Pfeiffer had $26,000 in savings, therefore it didn't make sense for him to rob a hamburger joint for a measly $138. They traced the money back to a holding company called Brazos Holding, realising that somebody was buying up the downtown area and the owner of Wally's Burgers was standing in his way. The man behind this holding company is none other than Jeremy Walsh, who was the Pfeiffer's defence attorney. Langley and Frohike relate this to Jimmy Bond over the Firewire headset, explaining to him the fact that Douglas Pfeiffer is guilty and is a killer for hire. They also explain to him that Walsh is the one responsible for everything. Jimmy asks why Walsh would want them talking to Pfeiffer if this was the case. He assumed that he didn't really have a choice. He had to keep a semblance of looking out for his clients and probably didn't believe that the lone gunman would go as far as they did. However, they do reveal that they believe there is an innocent man on death row. The kindly man with the cockroaches is called Wallace Crendell Atherton. They believe him to have been framed for the murder of a mechanic named Michael Corley, who was another holdout landowner. As Langley, Frohike and Yves continue to angrily discuss about how they can't find any major evidence that would clear Atherton, Jeremy Walsh arrives and listens to everything from the other side of the door. Realising that he is in danger of being caught, he decides he can't possibly wait 36 hours for Douglas Pfeiffer to be executed, and decides that he needs to do something to shut him up immediately. In the meantime, Byers continues to try and get Douglas to admit to what's going on, because even though it won't save him, they have to get Douglas Pfeiffer to testify, otherwise they cannot free Atherton and take down Walsh. Byers is kept appraised of what's going on through a note that Jimmy smuggles through the prison trustee. Although many others question why Jimmy trusts the man, Jimmy admits that he can't go through life being suspicious. He has to trust people unless they prove they cannot be trusted. Luckily, Jimmy is a good judge of character, and the trustee does assist them in this. Byers desperately tries to convince Douglas Pfeiffer to tell the truth, telling him if he's guilty, he could still be a better person like the person his mother thinks he is by confessing everything. Douglas Pfeiffer seems to be starting to waver. However, this is cemented when he is suddenly and brutally attacked by the man with the lisp, Lowry. Byers manages to save Douglas Pfeiffer by hitting Lowry over the head and urges Pfeiffer to confess to the guards as they take the soon-to-be executed man away to Death Watch. In the meantime, Frohike and Langley begin to instigate a plan to get Byers and Jimmy removed from prison. Jimmy is led away to be transferred to a proper prison as they change his records to show that he was wrongfully put on death row and he's actually a peeping Tom. As he meets with Byers outside to be taken away, the two police officers who have come to collect them are, of course, Langley and Frohike. At the same time, Jeremy Walsh shows up for a last meeting with Douglas Pfeiffer. Of course, at this point, Walsh believes that Pfeiffer has been killed by another inmate, however, feigns concern when he realises that this has not gone ahead. However, Douglas Pfeiffer is brought out and tells Walsh off for not being able to wait just another 36 hours for him to die. He has already implicated Walsh in two murders, Wally Spinell and Michael Cully. Two Texas Rangers are waiting in the wings to handcuff and take Walsh away. A series of headlines then montage to reveal a series of events. Jeremy Walsh has been convicted. Atherton is released and awarded a multi-million-dollar settlement, which he uses to set up a roach rescue clinic to help those who are constantly mistreated by society. And at the same time, the execution of Douglas Pfeiffer is set for midnight. Byers and Jimmy wait outside the prison for the guard to deliver the message that Douglas Pfeiffer has indeed been executed. As his mother, Alberta Pfeiffer, moves through the crowd of death penalty protesters, she's stopped briefly by Byers. He only says the words Mrs. Pfeiffer as apology, however, crying, she slaps him across the face and leaves. Although Byers looks heartbroken, Jimmy tries to cheer him up by saying, "I know how you feel, but I gotta figure it's like Spike and his cockroaches. Maybe we don't so much die as learn something, then move on." The two of them then just walk away together.
Thank you. First up, you reminded me of something we did actually forget about for Planet of the Frohikes, is a weird running gag about the Lone Goodman newspaper, which isn't entirely relevant for this one, but we're going to make sure it comes in, of
people finding it by accident.
People find it by accident, and also we get kind of the butt stuff pee jokes, because it's lying in the bottom of Simon's cage at the Boole laboratory.
Oh, and in Madam I Adam, he finds it soaked in cat pee in an alley.
Yeah. And Madam I Adam, it was a weird detail. And it's one of those whole, yeah, I can see why he went to the Lone Gunman, but it's kind of a stretch. In this one, it goes by and you don't really think about it until you stop a minute. Who at the Bull Laboratory is subscribed to the Lone Gunman to use as cage filler?
Yeah.
This is kind of like that whole Entertainment Weekly thing that the X-Files did for
Oh, it was Never Again.
Yeah, because there was that whole vendetta thing they had against the Entertainment Weekly writer, wasn't there?
Yeah.
It's like that one makes a kind of logical sense because it's the kind of thing you'd have, but for 2,000 subscribers, someone working in that place has to be subscribed to the government paper.
Because you use magazines as liner after you've read them.
Yeah. So it's a weird detail. But anyway, so we've got the first bona fide subscriber to the newspaper we've ever seen.
Yeah.
Other than Mulder.
Who apparently has been with them since day one and is particularly fond of Byers because he comes across as a nice, honourable person.
Yeah. And at the same time, you have to sort of say, lady... What?
She doesn't look like the typical person you'd expect to read some. I know it's a bit of a generalisation because you never know.
We don't. But we only have a kind of cursory idea of what the new Lone Gunman newspaper is. I mean, first off, it used to be called the Magic Bullet.
Yeah.
And I think the clearest glimpses of it prior to the Lone Gunman series we've ever got was in Dreamland Part 2, where we saw they were printing crap, basically. Yeah. So, lady, what are you doing? They ran an expose on the Teletubbies. And that thing about Saddam's Mandroid army, and you want to go, I thought you lot knew what you were doing.
Not to mention when Langley wanted to introduce the page 3 girl.
Yeah. So, there's just so much, but so our first bona fide subscriber, and you want to say I can understand to a point what they're getting at. At the same time, this isn't the Lone Gunman's wheelhouse again. I mean, it kind of is, but this is a very mundane.
I don't think that's the point that it's their interest. I think it's the fact that they're doing this because it's their number one fan.
Yeah.
It's a favour to them. They're using their journalistic skills to try and help prove a man's innocence.
But it's her going to them, though, is the bit that doesn't read quite right.
But if she's a long-term subscriber and these are the journalists that she knows how to contact.
I suppose so.
Yeah, when she's at the end of her tether, her son won't meet with his attorney anymore. There's nothing more she can do and anyone she can go to. She's exhausted her avenues, essentially.
Yeah, I do get that. At the same time, though,
this isn't like the other episodes where they've been investigating something.
No, it's true. But it's still going to them, and then we've made the joke a few times that we're wondering if this is a update of the A-Team, and then the series then goes and name checks the Sonic A-Team.
Yeah.
And you want to go, don't get your ideas from a TV show from the 80s, but that's where you've got your ideas from. So we're going into prison undercover.
Mm.
A stupid plan.
They could easily get them both killed.
How Byers actually survives this, I don't know.
Mm.
Given Jimmy, weirdly enough, has about the right mindset to cope with it, but Byers doesn't.
Yeah.
Byers apparently is oblivious to the realities of prison life, which feels very strange. Admittedly, they've been arrested so many times you'd think they'd start having an inkling about how this might work, but apparently not.
But there is being arrested and taken to a communal lockup, and there is death row.
Yes. And I think that was part of the other part of it, is they've snuck into death row in this case of, you are sure you can get them back off death row, because I'm not sure that's easy to do with computer manipulation. People tend to ask awkward questions about that.
Mm. And death row in America is notorious for people being executed when they're innocent. You hear a lot of stories about that.
Oh, well, there's been a few this year where basically the entire prosecution was saying, we don't believe the evidence for this anymore, this should be struck down.
Yeah.
And the various courts have said, no, we're going right ahead with it.
Yeah. There have been cases throughout centuries of people where there's overwhelming evidence to prove their innocence, but once they're on death row, it is so hard to get them off it again.
Yeah, and then there's that. The thing that always feels like just absolute. I can see some people framing it as some kind of kindness, but it feels like toying with people with the whole, the governor or something can get it postponed or delayed, and that seems to be purely whim-based, at least in fictional accounts of it.
Mm.
because it's like, again, we've got someone who was in the list. There's a whole thing about how Nietzsche Manley went to the chair like 4 times or something, and they called it off like 4 times. And they're sort of sure at that one, it's a case of, oh, the governor will call and do it again. It's a case of, what on earth is going on with this justice system?
How torturous that must be. Because, like in this, they put you on death watch when you're within a few days of being taken to it. And to get to that point and then say, whoops, no, back to your cell again, when you've just been sat there for 3 days preparing for the end.
Yes, it feels absolutely callous and like a cat toying with a mouse kind of thing. This is horrible.
And of course, the major fictional example of this is The Green Mile, which is clearly a major influence on this episode.
I was trying to work out how we got around to that, but it's a case of, I was half convinced that it all came out afterwards, and it's a case of, no, 2 years beforehand, guys, you're not even being subtle.
You've got Mr. Atherton, or Spike as he gets nicknamed in the episode. I should have probably made that clear in my description. And his friendship with the little cockroach is like a cross between John Coffey and the guy in The Green Mile who's got Mr. Jangles the mouse.
Yeah, who Tom Hanks winds up with in the aftermath.
And the similar thing where another inmate kills Mr. Jangles and John Coffey resurrects him.
Yeah. And it's the kind of thing where you want to say, okay, I get the fact that you're doing a kind of topical thing. At the same time, it's so recent, you can't escape that it's just The Green Mile, but done faster.
I think we worked out that the book had been out for a substantial amount of time, but this was maybe 3 or 4 years after the film.
2.
Was it only 2 years?
99 was the film, so...
But I think the book came out maybe around 96.
Yes, and as a tangent, I remember the book coming out because it was done as a part work at first.
Yes, it was.
It was done really... It was an experiment from Stephen King at the time.
The book itself is in about 8 parts, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, you could only get it combined these days, but it was released like in 2 or 3 chapter chunks at first.
Yeah.
Which was just a bit different. But anyway...
It's an excellent book, it should be noted.
I've only ever seen the film, but it was a good film. Not as good as Shawshank Redemption, but then again... Because I think that was what a lot of...
It's a different animal to Shawshank, though, because The Green Mile's got a lot of fantastical elements to it, and Shawshank is deadly serious.
Yeah, but it's hard to shake the perception that The Green Mile happened because Shawshank blew up, as it did.
Yeah, Shawshank is a masterpiece, and quite rightly, people often say it's one of the greatest movies of all time. The Green Mile isn't as good, but it's still an excellent and a very emotional piece.
Oh yeah, but it's hard not to look at both of them and say Stephen King went back to a similar source and tried to repeat the process.
But also, Shawshank was a short story and Green Mile was a full novel.
Oh yeah. I'm not saying that's definitely what Stephen King did, but the perception at the time was he wants Shawshank again. This is all real relevant other than, yes, The Green Mile's DNA is just suffused through this.
Yeah.
We talked a lot for Planet of the Frohikes about how it felt like the comedy break from the rest of the series. And this one is trying to be more serious. But having Spike do his rescue center for cockroaches at the end, you just want to say, what are you doing? Because if he's got the money to do it, he can absolutely go and do it.
Which he does. He's got his multi-million-dollar settlement.
Oh yeah, he can go and do it. It's just, you look at it going... How is no one in your periphery saying, stop it? It's a stupid idea. You can like cockroaches. The general population does not see them how you do.
As a great lover of insects and keeper of exotic beetles, I find myself trying to justify this hobby to people all the time, with people saying, well, why would you want that as a pet? It's like, well, look, they're really cool. But even I think, would stop short of spending $1 million making a beetle sanctuary.
Yes. I'm not saying you shouldn't have some kind of beetle, like a beetle kind of colony or some kind of preserved space for them. But a rescue centre for cockroaches is just so far off the course of sensible. It's beyond parody.
It's even with his little sign with the cockroach with its arm in a sling.
Yeah, it's like, what are you doing? I'm happy you got released from prison for a crime you didn't commit. I mean, we're also going to have to say there are a lot of coincidences in this episode.
Yeah.
Because it's not only, you've managed to get yourself into death row onto the right wing, opposite the innocent man, adjacent to the killer of the lawyer who's advocating for everything, and then Byers gets himself hospitalised and put into the next bed over from him.
Byers gets himself hospitalised, but not so seriously it causes him lasting injury either.
Yeah, it's one of those, I get the whole... you taunt the prisoners so you actually sort of are legitimately injured. But Byers, the risks of your chosen route are just horrendous.
Yeah, it's fortunate that, Byers took a beating and the guy didn't break his neck or something.
Yeah, and one of the problems with that is kind of we don't know at all what the deal he has with the lawyer. Because it does come out that basically Doug Pfeiffer is doing what he's doing because his mother's going to be taken care of.
Yeah.
She's going to get some of whatever money that he's got to sort of keep her living her life in comfort when he's gone.
Yeah.
That's a very basic kind of film noirish type plot that you've seen in loads of different things. That's fine. You don't get any impression that the other guy has anyone at all that for why he's doing this dirty work, because he's got to be getting something out of it. Otherwise, why is he doing it? Because you don't kill someone in prison. Well, generally, I think some people do, admittedly, but generally you don't because it makes everything worse for you.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, he's on death row already. How much worse is it going to get? Well,
yeah, but still, you presumably there's a minute chance of getting out, but that's not good. I mean, I know, but it's odd though, isn't it? And also the fact his shank is that chunk of metal.
Cement.
Cement.
Mm.
As you said, people use sharpened toothbrushes or bits of glass or razor blades.
To be fair, I'm basing this on movies set in prisons.
Yeah. But still, practical things you can have, not sharpened chunks of concrete.
Mm.
I don't think I've ever heard before.
No.
That's weird. So, are you going to say something else?
You were saying about Douglas Pfeiffer's motivation being film noirish and simple but believable. At the same time, if you want your mother to be prepared for, there's way easier ways of doing this.
Oh, yeah.
Have we considered massive life insurance policy?
Yeah.
Which does not involve you murdering anyone and going to death row.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of these episodes where it's both too complicated and too simple. Like, there's some backstory here which we never get. Because they do kind of just push it aside of that Jeremy Wash wants to do this real estate deal.
Yeah, that he's the sole benefactor of this Bezos holding company.
Yeah. But I think where it comes unstuck, if you think about it, is... So was Douglas Pfeiffer always willing to kill people for payment? Or did you have to convince him to do this? Or what was he doing? Why did he get into this?
I don't want to judge the American system because it could be entirely believable. But can you get on death row for just killing one person?
Yes, although it's usually racially motivated, because some of the horror cases are things like you find people who are like, they're kind of aided and abetted rather than actually did the crime, but because the actual person who did the crime gave a confession implicating you or something.
Okay.
The justice, and you happen to be the wrong ethnicity, the justice system throws the book at you.
It's a bit like a prisoner's dilemma then.
A bit like that, but there's usually a racial component to it.
Okay.
If you are the wrong ethnicity, they will come down like a ton of bricks, no matter how tangential your.
But Pfeiffer's white.
Exactly. I did remark as well, though, that the prison population on death row was astonishingly white.
I think is it? No. Well, Pfeiffer's really the only white guy you see on there.
Well, there's Jimmy and Byers.
Oh, other than Jimmy and Byers, if you're counting them.
Yeah. We have got, I've forgotten his name, but Sissy from Amazing Bellini.
Larry
is seems to be Latino.
Yeah.
And Spike is black.
Yeah.
But I think the wide shots, they looked very white in the crowds.
You could possibly argue the same thing about the Green Mile, though, where, again, the only black person on death row is actually the one who's been wrongfully committed.
Yeah. And
I think there is a statistic where it would be uncomfortable if they went down that route in the sense of the list again as well.
Yeah.
But there is a statistic in America that predominantly people on death row are predominantly not white.
Yes.
Because again, it's what you're saying about them throwing the book inordinately at people of colour.
Yes, so especially the places with the death penalty are disproportionately stacked against them, shall we say.
Which is terrible.
Absolutely, but this is why prison abolition and anti-death penalty things are, common causes to go for.
We haven't had the death penalty in the UK for decades, which could be also why it's hard to get your head around now.
Yes, it's very hard to see why you get it. I mean, there is a statistic as well, though, in that death row and the execution is massively more expensive than other kind of prison life.
Yes, I've heard that banded around, that it is actually cheaper to incarcerate someone for life than it is to execute them.
Yeah, and a lot of that's because you have to go through so many court proceedings before you actually get to the execution and everything, all the appeals and everything.
It makes sense.
It does. And I'm not saying I'm glad that's there as much as it doesn't seem to help, but I'm glad it's there. But yeah, it seems insane that you're going to say we have to execute people when you could not and not cost money. And maybe reform and like rehabilitate people instead of just locking them in a big concrete building. But that's insane. Apparently, we're very leftist here. If you hadn't picked up on it,
just a bit, yeah. But again, as I say, it's one of those things where we're English and this isn't our culture as well.
No.
So I do appreciate if there are annoyances we're not understanding too.
We primarily get it through pop culture, so that gives us a slant in one way or another.
Predominantly in pop culture these days, the death penalty is never portrayed as being a good thing.
No. Ever, really?
I imagine it must be at some point. But, when you're looking at it through the lens of things like The Green Mile.
True. I was going to say, I was thinking even going back to the evil person's being executed, I just think of Child's Play. It's like, we're gonna kill Brad Dourif. Oh no, he's infected a children's doll. Now it's malevolent and killing people. So the death penalty was a bad idea.
Or Nietzsche Manley.
Yeah.
I mean, that did not stop him from killing 5 more people.
No. So, yeah, even in fictitious terms and they're a terrible person, it's bad.
Mm.
Or there's some terrible Ghost in the Machine film from the 80s where the killer is a prisoner who is executed on the electric chair and, electricity is magic, basically. And we've veered way off Maximum Byers at this point.
What about the absolute masterpiece that is Reaper?
Yes, as much as I understand what was happening in Reaper. We're going to veer back. We've moved away from Lone Gunman. We're going to come back here.
Yeah.
So, an interesting point is we commented on Planet of the Frohikes that Vince Gilligan understands Yves. Frank Spotnitz apparently negates that understanding. Because what are we doing with her now? Because her whole aspect is pretty lady with nice body. That's her whole contribution to this episode is she looks good wearing skimpy clothing.
In this episode, we just use her playing... Is that what you call white trash?
Yes, she's playing a white trash. Well, I'm not sure what her ethnicity ultimately is. She's English, I know, but historically, anything.
In this episode, I mean...
She's basically trailer trash.
Trailer trash, that's the phrase.
She is a trailer trash wife.
Where she comes in with the kind of thick American drawl and...
Yeah, the low-cut top, the visible bra, the short skirt.
Hey, baby.
Yeah.
That my terrible American accent.
Popping the bubble gum, all the cliches.
Yeah.
And basically all the male people in the prison just pay attention to her because, she's the attractive trailer trash.
Mm.
And it's one of those things where Fujiko Mino doing this would be fine because she would be building to something.
Yeah.
There's something she wants, something she needs. This is her route to get it.
Again, we're referring to the femme fatale in the Lupin the Third series.
Yeah. But Yves is doing this because Lone Gunmen have said, we are idiots and put 2 of our people onto death row.
Might have been a bad idea.
Completely failed to consider the very simple idea that Yves immediately presents of how you also get into the prison system without trapping yourself.
Yeah.
We need you to try to dress up as a trailer trash wife and pretend to be Jimmy's wife. What? It's been such a complaint all the way through, but it's basically her character isn't being used for her character again. She's there because she's a reason. Well, she's she is very attractive.
Mm.
This should not be the be-all end-all of a contribution to an episode.
No.
But it is, again.
We haven't seen one for a while where Yves actually has something to gain. I mean, other than at the start of Planet of the Frohikes where she's got a separate sting on the go and they just mess it up for her.
And that's fine. That was absolutely fine for her usual thing.
But then when you have this one and 3 men in a smoking diaper and Madam I Madam, she's got no stake.
Yes, I don't know.
And she's supposed to be a mercenary. I know she's got a kind of, odd liking of them.
Yeah, but I don't understand why she likes them. I think it's the problem.
But the early episodes, even if you do have a bit of a kinship and a friendship of them, The pilot and Jimmy Bond are all Eve is in it for herself.
Yes.
Helping them is incidental to that.
Exactly. And so her being on call for help, we've made ourselves into a stupid situation again. It's yeah, I can't put it any way than Spotnitz has negated what Vince Gilligan briefly understood, apparently.
Yeah.
Because how is this reverted? And then it's things like sneaking that headset thing through to Jimmy. Which the episode notes point out that this predates any technology that actually existed like that.
It's very similar to what is now the Google Glass, but
way before
it would have been space age looking at the time this came out. So
it's I'm not sure how the government have done this one either. But I understand the ruse of she pretends to buy whatever potato chips it is from the vending machine and Cheetos, and she puts the prepared packet over to give to Jimmy. It's the kind of thing where the cliche from the past is you bring in a cake and it's got a file baked into it.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of the Pushing Daisies one, which is the hilarious one of the pie with the outline of the gun on top of it. It's like, take that away. This is such a common idea. It's a joke in things, and you don't do the file in the cake anymore.
I presume their way of getting round it in this is the fact that the officers saw her buying the bag of crisps. Yeah. So it's not the same way as, I've brought in this cake I've baked.
I was thinking of Pee-wee's Big Adventure where he's put it in the footlong as well.
Yeah.
But you'd think there'd still be some security check given that thing is on the outside. That vending machine is on the outside. As much as it's cleared and bolted down and everything, we're going to have to go back to the Shawshank Redemption again. There's the whole thing with Red. Red can get you whatever you want.
Yeah.
He's got a way of sneaking contraband into the prison system somehow. That has to come outside. That has to come in through deliveries. There are people who have been corrupted along the way who can do this for you.
And he can get you basically anything down to a rock hammer.
Exactly. So the point is, as much as they would sort of say the vending machine is presumably safe, you can't guarantee that that supply chain hasn't been tampered with in the interim, and there are things in that vending machine that shouldn't be there. So I think that packet of Cheetos would still go through a metal detector and it'd say, what the hell is that?
I think maybe your better thing... I know it's all part of Jimmy's arc about trusting people, but you have someone in the position of, like, that janitor.
Yes, he's the right kind of person.
Yeah.
Because he's an information relay person, someone who can move around freer than other people.
Yeah.
And yeah, he should have been a vector to get stuff in a way that doesn't involve... But then again, you can't have Yves being a sort of pin-up girl.
But I also did like the bit with Jimmy trusting that guy in the episode, purely because none of the rest of them would have even considered trusting that guy. It would have been beneath them, and they're so paranoid that it wouldn't have crossed their mind. And just, it is incredibly Jimmy, just that whole, well, how can I live my life like this? I have to trust him until he proves he can't be trusted.
Yeah. And again, it's that kind of contrarian stance that Jimmy should normally be wrong.
But I think this is how Jimmy should be working, is Jimmy does not have the book smarts, Jimmy does not know computers, Jimmy can't be trusted to do anything complex. But Jimmy is a good judge of character.
Yes.
It's the one thing he does excel at better than them who are kind of jaded computer geeks at varying degrees.
Yeah.
Jimmy, in the same way Jimmy understood the chimpanzees and their plight, he's Red, the one person he can trust in this prison.
Yes. And again, he's coping better with prison and Byers somehow.
Yeah.
Because what goes as well, though, and it kind of plays for laugh, is when that janitor comes up to Byers and says, do you want to trade for smokes or something? And Byers is trying to dismiss it. Yeah. And the guys look kind of like really kind of flustered because it's a case of, no, I need you to take this from me.
Yeah.
This is not the script. And it's again, Byers, it feels so stupid for Byers to go into that prison the best of times. But for Byers to go in and apparently have no idea how the environment works.
Yeah.
It's like, why would you do this? Other than it's on the A-team, which shouldn't be your thing at all.
And as they note, it's pretty much a go-to on any sitcom, which is part of their kind of meta joke for this episode.
In 2001, the idea of meta jokes was new and reasonably okay. 2024, I don't want meta jokes anymore because they've become so tiresome. Please stop. Like, watched Fellows' review of Silent Hill 2, and he was pointing out all the meta jokes for the old game of Nat.
Oh, like the bit where Maria holds up her old costume, that sort of thing.
And you want to go, I can understand how some people find it cute. At the same time, I'd like you to stop.
Mm.
Just stop acknowledging the other thing exists. If you're going to remake it, just remake it.
Yeah.
Just go and tell a story. Don't keep nudging me in the ribs and say, hey, remember this? I'm talking to you, Square Enix, as well, because stop it. One thing we didn't talk about, and because it's basically relevant, but I think we kind of need to touch on it, because it's also peculiar, is the sting.
The opening bit.
The opening bit. And I'm in two minds about that, because on the one hand, yeah, I can actually see the lone gunman getting into Elvis is still alive stuff. That's more... That's out there, but still, it's plausible.
It is a running joke on the X-Files, because Mulder believes it.
Yeah. But it's unlikely, but it's a plausible thing. We are running out of time frame when that's even remotely possible still.
Yeah.
But in 2001, that's not outside the remit of being, he could have faked his own death.
It's always been one of those harmless conspiracy theories as well.
Well, I mean, you watched, just this month, you watched Death Becomes Her, which has the blatant joke where Elvis is in amongst all the other people who've drunk the potion.
With James Dean and various others.
James Dean and... But yeah, they were in amongst the various people. And... yeah, it's... Elvis still being alive. Okay. It's kind of outside the government remits, but it is a conspiracy theory thing. It's plausible.
It's very popular as well.
It's very popular. Don't quite understand why you fastened onto... Well, no, tell a lie. They do explain why, because it's the same birth date, same birthplace. There's a whole load of things line up very precisely.
Yeah.
Cool. Where we break down a lot is the duck soup bit.
Yes.
And we watched that going, what's going on? Because I think the problem is they don't show you the reverse shot of old Elvis for a long time. And you're thinking, what's he doing in the mirror? It took us a long time to twig that's what was going on.
I was looking at that thinking, my God, that guy looks just like Jimmy. Oh, wait.
Well, no, because at first it's going to be one of those whole, like Frohike in Eine kleine Frohike.
Yeah.
Where we've got, he's playing both roles so that you can do the substitution.
Kind of like an Elvis Presley-related Prince and the Pauper.
Yeah. So you can switch him over. So, that's not too bad. At the same time, it feels like you could have had a whole episode about an Elvis impersonator being the real Elvis rather than that sting, because it feels
completely unconnected.
It's completely unconnected, and then the end of the sting is just dispensed with off screen. It's like Jimmy's been arrested. Well, sort of arrested by these people who were after him for loan avoidance or whatever it was.
It was tax evasion or something. Yeah.
And then it's just, oh yeah, that was an embarrassment. Oh, weren't we silly?
Yeah. That could have been your into prison, though, as well. That's how you could have got into the entire prison plot.
Yeah.
Admittedly, you wouldn't have wound up on death row for that.
No. But, I mean, okay, actually, that's a good one. Couldn't you've had Douglas Pfeiffer's mother coming to them and say, I believe Elvis is alive and he's just on this cruise liner? And that's her into them.
No, I think I'd go the other way. We end the sting with Jimmy being arrested, Jimmy's in prison, and then while they're trying to figure out how to get him out, they're approached by Alberta, who says, actually, my son's on death row. So rather than getting Jimmy out, they transfer him onto death row.
Yeah.
And you've got it a bit more seamlessly there.
Yeah. Vince, I'm very disappointed in you, or spotting it saying, no, we don't need this. But anyway, the Elvis conspiracy, I don't mind. It feels odd again, but it's better than some of the conspiracies. This is one that actually crops up in the real world, and people make jokes about it all the time. And I do kind of like the idea of Elvis spending his days as an Elvis impersonator. That's great.
Yeah.
I don't know if we've got much else from Action Byers.
No, I think that about covers everything now.
Well, this is, interestingly, is our 99th episode.
Hooray!
Hooray! We didn't do anything for the 50th, but this time we paid attention. So next time we're going to do a special for our 100th episode.
Yay!
Yay! So one big thing we've kept talking about since the inception of the podcast is the Simpsons episode of The X-Files with David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson as Mulder and Scully in it.
Which was called The Springfield Files.
Yes. Their screen time probably adds up to like a little under 3 minutes, but we're going to do this anyway. Because we must, because it's kind of X-Files related.
The other thing that we are going to talk about is completely different. We have a copy of an unmade X-Files episode script. So this script is a particularly famous one. The script's name is Flight 180. It was originally cited to be an X-Files episode in one of the early seasons, but it was instead later adapted and became the basis of Final Destination.
Yes, I mean, we put unmade in inverted commas. Yes, so we're going to take a break from Lone Gunman for a bit, and we'll worry about the ones we've got to do after that, because we're careening to the end of the Lone Gunman at that point, aren't we?
Yes, we are. We've only got, I think, 3 more Lone Gunman episodes to... 3 more Lone Gunman-centric podcasts to do.
Yes. And then we'll be back to season 9.
Thank God.
In the meantime, though, if you'd like to get hold of us, our email address is thingsgettingstrange42@gmail.com.
You can also find us on social media, and do hook me up if you'd like me to present anything at the start of the show, be it any fan events, zines, whatever X-Files related stuff you've got on the go. You can find us on Twitter and Tumblr at GetStrange42, on Mastodon at GetStrange42@universedon.com, or on Facebook, where you can find us by searching for Things Are Getting Strange and X-Files Rewatch Podcast. Also, if you're not sick of my voice right now, I also do stream live on Twitch TV under the name AdverseCamber42. My main stream is live Mondays and Wednesdays at 8 PM GMT and Saturdays at 5 PM GMT.
We have a Patreon, patreon.com/thingsgettingstrange, where for as little as $3 you can have access to our bonus episodes. These include our Let's Play of the first X-Files game, the FMV game starring Craig Gilmore, who insert amusing way he died this time. Our theme music is A Vision by Kevin MacLeod. You can find it on Computech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Thank you all for listening, and until next time, please remember...
The truth is out there.